This is America's Roundtable from Washington, D.C., a weekly national radio program with leading voices, thinkers, and reform proponents representing the academia, business, media, think tanks, and the political arena. I'm Joel Anand, your co-host, joined by Natasha Sartor, economist and co-founder of the International Leaders Summit and former contributor to the Economist Intelligence Unit. This weekend, we are pleased to have Mr. Harris Rosen rejoin us as our special guest. Mr. Harris Rosen is president and COO of Rosen Hotels and Resorts and is Florida's largest independent hotelier. Founded in 1974, Rosen Hotels and Resorts currently features a collection of 7 Central Florida hotels offering a total of more than 6,300 guest rooms, approximately 6% of Central Florida inventory. And Rosen Hotels has several subsidiaries that work with the parent company to create a synergy that maximizes operational efficiencies. They have the Millennium Technology Group in Orlando, which is a leading provider of quality IT products and telecommunication services for the hospitality industry. And also in 1995, Provinsure is Rosen's insurance agency and risk management consulting company and assists companies in setting up self-insured healthcare programs and primary medical care centers similar to Rosen's hotel in-house programs. It is truly a delight to have you rejoin us, Mr. Rosen.
Welcome, Mr. Rosen.
Hey guys, happy to be here with you.
Terrific indeed, sir. As an entrepreneur and business leader in our nation, creating jobs, how do you view the ongoing negotiations in Washington, D.C. regarding the impending fiscal cliff, which, if not addressed, will raise taxes for all Americans, all our fellow American citizens, and as economists have warned us, will slow down our economy? What are your thoughts about these challenges that we face today, Mr. Rosen?
I think Washington, D.C. has demonstrated throughout the decades that there really aren't many things that they're capable of doing very well. And during this process, we certainly witness a certain ineptitude on the part of those who represent us in Washington, D.C. And it's very sad, particularly for those of us who would like to understand what the future is like. We hear the word uncertainty over and over again, and we acquired 25 acres several months ago with the thought of adding to our inventory, but we dare not do anything now. We don't know what healthcare costs will be like specifically. We have no idea what the tax structure is going to be like. We really are uncertain about the future. What impact will all of these potential new initiatives have on our colleagues who we do business with, all of the conferences that come to Orlando, all of the families that come? What impact will all of these initiatives have on them and their economic well-being? But the whole process is really flawed. If this was something that I was confronted with, someone said to me that I had to both generate revenue and I had to reduce costs, but the first thing I would do is decide what my goal was. Specifically, how much money do I want to generate in revenue and how much money would I like to reduce my costs by? And then that number, let's say it's $1 trillion or $2 trillion or $3 trillion, becomes my goal. And then I say to myself, how much of that would I like to impact by increasing revenue? And let's say I say half. And so my goal is, if it's a $3 trillion enterprise, my goal is to generate $1.5 trillion in additional revenue. That leaves $1.5 trillion in reduction in expenses. Mm-hmm. And then I take the revenue component and I say, how can one generate revenue? Well, one can generate revenue through tax increases, through changes in the whole tax structure. Those are 2 excellent ways of generating revenue. And I would decide which of the 2 I would utilize first and how much of each I would need to get to the $1.5 trillion. In terms of expenses, we would look at freezing increases in salaries and wages. We would look at capping any increases in budgets over a certain period of time. We would look at Medicare and determine could we legitimately increase the age from 65 to 67 and from 67 to 70 over a 20 or a 25-year period of time. And then we would just crunch those numbers, reach 1.5 on the revenue side, reach 1.5 on the reduction in expense side, and everyone would get together and we say, guys, does it make sense? And just vote on it. But all of this nonsense that's going on, it's just pathetic. And the citizens of the United States of America deserve much better than that.
Indeed. In fact, as you've just rightfully mentioned, Mr. Rosen, about the expenditure side of things, which is out of control. Just a few weeks ago, we had U.S. Senator Tom Coburn, and over the past few years, he's worked on a study called Wastebook, and he publishes this on a yearly basis. And this past year, just he and his staff came up with some $20 billion in government waste, fraud, and duplication. But the most interesting thing that we heard from Senator Coburn is the fact that he mentioned the statistic, the amount, about $300 billion of government waste, spending, which is unnecessary, and fraud. So very likely these items could be put out of the budget rather than American taxpayers paying for significant waste.
Absolutely. Listen, and I've heard the senator speak, and he speaks eloquently about how inept government is, and how much corruption and how much fraud and how much just plain waste is involved. What I would do in that regard is I would hire several thousand of the best and brightest college graduates, and I would spread them throughout the government and say, look, guys, you guys will get a 1% commission on every dollar that you save in your particular department. So if it's $1 million in savings, 10% would be $100,000, 1% would be $10,000. So $10,000 for every $1 million you save, and that would be an incentive for them to really do their due diligence and work hard. And I don't know if we'd be able to demonstrate savings of hundreds of billions of dollars, but certainly any amount would certainly spare the taxpayer for having to fund an enterprise that is just not worth funding.
Right. It just shows that it would be good to have a president with business experience.
Oh, boy, you hit it right on the head. Look, does it mean that someone who spent years in the private sector would be a great president? Of course not. You could find someone who has been in business and they just turn out to be not the kind of president that we're looking for. But is it an advantage for someone to at least understand, appreciate, and quite frankly, love free enterprise and entrepreneurship? Of course it would be a wonderful advantage, because that's the little engine that drives this wonderful country. And to hear the president say that we're not exceptional, that we're not extraordinary, that we have too many wealthy individuals who are greedy and stingy and don't pay their fair share in taxes is really disheartening. Is he right to a certain extent? Of course we have wealthy individuals who don't do their fair share, who aren't generous, who aren't philanthropic. Of course we do. But that's not how you win people over and influence them. You do it by putting an arm on their shoulder and looking at them and saying, "We need your help. Can you guys hop on board and help us? Can you use your philanthropic dollars a little bit more aggressively to help us until we get out of the mess we're in?" And they would respond quite favorably. But if you point at them and say you're stingy and we're going to raise your taxes and you're not doing your fair share, you're not going to win too many people over to your side, and that's rather sad. So if you had someone who really understood what it's like to sit down and negotiate, what it's like to try to convince a group of individuals of a new initiative that you're contemplating for your company. But unfortunately, my fear is that this president really doesn't have any idea how to manage what it's like to look at a financial statement and determine from that statement what efforts need to be made to improve the situation. And that's really quite sad.
Right. I mean, from the media, we learned that President Obama has been meeting with small business owners and CEOs of large companies to discuss the impending fiscal cliff. There was a group of CEOs of very large, actually global companies, including Pepsi, Honeywell, General Electric, among others. And when you look at those companies, all of them are companies which generate most of their sales and profits abroad, that is outside of the U.S., and many times they don't repatriate it because that would mean 35% of corporate tax on top of the tax that they're paying in other countries. So as an owner, Mr. Rosen, as an owner of a leading company which does all of its business domestically, what would be your advice to the administration and the legislators regarding the corporate tax, in which you would also be taking some burden away by other companies who are having huge amounts of money abroad to repatriate them and be taxed at a lower flat tax rate?
Look, that's of course an excellent question, and what you want to do is soften the burden so that those revenues can be repatriated. I mean, that's what it's all about. I don't think you want to discourage people from going overseas and generating revenue. What you want to encourage them to do is bringing the revenue back to the United States, and so reducing the taxes rather dramatically so that those multi-billions of dollars come back into circulation in the United States where they belong. And I think that isn't terribly complicated to contemplate and sit down and work that out. The sad thing is this, though. When you talk to those huge Fortune 500 multinational organizations, you get a certain perspective. And I don't know what small business owners he's been talking to, but people like me have a totally different perspective than the big guys because we're not big guys. And we operate from a totally different perspective than these giant corporations do, because every penny is really so incredibly important. Mm-hmm. What separates us from the rest of the pack is that we made a decision when we started the company 38 years ago that whenever we had the ability to do so, we would make sure that we retired all of our debt. So we are a relatively small company, but we are debt-free. Mm-hmm. And so during these very difficult times, we don't have the burden of principal and interest to pay. If we did have that burden, I suspect we'd be paying somewhere between $70 and $80 million a year in principal and interest. Well, not having that burden really provides us with a wonderful opportunity to continue to do relatively well, even during difficult economic times. And we have spent, in the last 4 years during these difficult times, about $70 million, not borrowed, money that we had in the bank, to completely refurbish our hotels. And we've kept 345 people working during that time. And jokingly, we refer to our expenditure as the Rosen stimulus package. Mm-hmm. Real shovel-ready jobs, right. Real people working, and real productive work they're doing, not just busy work, real work, and to improve our properties so that when people come and visit and stay with us, they are so pleased to see the improvements that we've made. So little guys are often where you find creativity and where you find out-of-the-box thinking. Mm-hmm. Our Tangible Park program would be a perfect example of calling in to Washington, D.C., Fortune 500 guys, sports franchisors, people who are wealthy, and saying, look, I'm not going to point a finger at you accusingly and condemn you guys and say that you're just outside of my thinking and you're not paying your fair share and you're not paying your fair share of taxes. Instead, I would say, why don't you each adopt a neighborhood? Each adopt a neighborhood. Could be where your office headquarters is, could be where the stadium is, where the arena is, where your sports franchise is. It could be a neighborhood where you have some friends or employees, and adopt that neighborhood and make sure that every 2-, 3-, and 4-year-old in the neighborhood gets to go to preschool free. Create the little schools in the neighborhood, or build a school outside where all of those youngsters can get their preschool education. Then work with the children and the families and make sure that they understand that when the youngster graduates from high school, and you will be surprised, 100% of the kids will graduate from high school instead of 30, 40, or 50%, because that's what's happening at Tangelo Park. And when they graduate from high school, you share with the parents of the newborn, your child, your newborn, is already guaranteed a college education. That would change the neighborhood so dramatically overnight, wouldn't cost the government a penny, and these wealthy individuals would feel good about supporting this great country of ours. And if we did 3,000 of those neighborhoods throughout the United States, we would not recognize the United States of America. I guarantee you that. And you would then have happy, wealthy individuals believing appropriately that they are doing beneficial things for this wonderful country, and you would have a president who is the beneficiary of all of that largesse, instead of having these conflicts and these nasty comments coming from Washington, D.C. So here's an individual who just doesn't understand how to communicate, how to encourage people to do the right thing, and that's really quite sad.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Rosen, you truly are an example of the best when looking at responsible capitalism in America, mm-hmm. and how the private sector and the nonprofit working together can address our nation's challenges without the involvement and, I would say, the interference of the federal government. And it's
absolutely correct. Absolutely correct.
It's also important for our listeners to understand the importance of our nation, and reflecting on a study done by Alexis de Tocqueville, who visited America in the 19th century, and he wrote a book called Democracy in America. And he talked not about America's greatness when it came to the capital city or the government structure, but he talked about the volunteer spirit, the importance of associations, groups, and how individuals and leading figures from the community would be involved in solving the problems at the local level. And that's what he talked about, America's greatness, and how much you have shown through your example of transforming some of the hard-pressed and more economically challenged areas by providing not just only a temporary solution, but a more sustainable endeavor to transforming both lives and a community.
Listen, I agree with you completely, and how sad it is that we have someone leading this exceptional, wonderful country of ours who doesn't really comprehend what you just said. That's really so sad. He's not an evil person. He's certainly bright. He's certainly articulate, but he just doesn't have the experience to fully comprehend the potential that exists in this great country, and particularly in the private sector. Does government have a role? Of course it does. We need a strong military. We need someone that will collect the revenues on occasion, the IRS. We do need infrastructure, and we need a government, I suspect, that would be responsible for federal highways. We probably need a postal system and maybe the government involvement there. But for crying out loud, the private sector certainly has the capacity, the intellect, the creativity to do far better than the government in almost every other aspect of our lives. And it is so sad that we're not taking advantage of that.
Right. And I remember from all our conversations so far, your private sector solutions to education show that high-quality education can be provided without public sector involvement. And this would certainly take a portion of a burden from the budget. So to look at these initiatives as how to replace currently government-funded initiatives through private sector initiatives, that would be that spending cuts part of the fiscal cliff, which could be relieved through private sector. But on the other side, what we see is a contrary going on at this point, because it seems that administration and the Congress are attempting to reduce or eliminate tax deductions for charitable gifts. Have you heard about it, and what is your opinion?
Yes, of course, and I think that tragically, I think if deductions for charitable gifts were no longer appropriate, my fear is that philanthropy and charitable giving might decline, and it might decline rather substantially, which is sad, because you should not make a philanthropic donation just because you're able to take a deduction. But I think there are some people who would do that. Here's what the solution should be. This would avoid an increase in tax rates from 36 to 39.5 or 6%. This would get us out of that whole discussion about what kind of deductions are appropriate or not. What do we do? We eliminate mortgage interest? Do we eliminate charitable deductions? What do we do? Here's what we do. And I think that the 250,000 number is far too low. Someone who earns $250,000, and that would be probably close to $150,000 after all of the taxes they pay, is certainly not wealthy. So let's raise the bar to $1 million. And I think if you asked millionaires, true millionaires, would you mind paying a little bit more in taxes? I'm not talking about an increase in tax rates. I'm talking about paying a little bit more in taxes until we get ourselves out of this mess we're in. The vast majority would say, absolutely, we have no problem with that whatsoever. And here's how you do it. You limit the amount available for deductions. Whatever you want to limit to, 50,000, 25,000, 70,000, 10,000, and only on people earning $1 million or more. Right. Because for the most part, those wealthy individuals, for the most part, don't have mortgages. They pay cash for their homes. And they do that for very pragmatic reasons. If you buy a $100,000 home at the end of 20 or 25 years, you would have paid $200,000 for the home, including interest. Mm. So we know that you write a check initially, and you're saving essentially double the amount for the house by paying cash. So they don't have to worry about mortgage deductions. In terms of charitable contributions, whether I'm able to deduct them or not is irrelevant. I'm going to continue to make the charitable contributions I make because it would be absolutely inappropriate for me to say, well, if I can't deduct it from my taxes, I'm not going to write the check. So the vast majority of very wealthy individuals, whether it's Gates or whether it's Zuckerberg or any of those people that are making hundreds of millions of dollars in contributions, or Warren Buffett, they wouldn't hesitate for a moment to continue to make those contributions, whether deduction was allowable or not. But what you do is you say you have $15,000 or $20,000 to deduct. You decide where you want the deduction to come from. Mm. So if people earning over $1 million would have that restriction, we would certainly generate substantially more in terms of tax revenues. Look, one of the things that wealthy individuals are always a little bit reticent about is giving the government more money. Right. Because what you mentioned early on in the conversation was, how much waste is there? How much fraud is there? How much abuse is there? So are we better off if wealthy individuals adopt a neighborhood, if wealthy individuals build a school, if wealthy individuals are involved in the educational process, where they can see exactly how those dollars are being spent, no waste, no fraud, no ineptitude. It's my $1 million or $10 million or $100 million, and the Gates Foundation does that. They make sure that the funds that they're spending in Africa are funds that are being spent carefully, frugally, and intelligently. And the government, unfortunately, is incapable of doing it. And it's not their money. So there's much less inclination for them to be prudent and careful, because whether the money is wasted or not doesn't affect them in any way. If I write a check for $5 or $10 million a year, I want to be sure those funds are being utilized in a very effective way.
It would be very important for our listeners to hear about an important story. We have been most impressed in hearing about your work in Florida and your specific initiatives which have empowered our fellow citizens. And could you kindly share with our listeners your story, Mr. Rosen, on how your experiences and dedicated long-term efforts are making a difference in Haiti?
I certainly appreciate that question. We have a number of initiatives right here in America, and that's of course our first priority. But a third of our associates working in our company, we have about 4,500 people who work in our little company, are from Haiti. And so many years ago, 15 to 20 years ago, we went to Haiti and we delivered tons of healthcare supplies, and we distributed them in various clinics and hospitals throughout Haiti. We came back several years later with tons of school supplies, and we went to school with backpacks and books and pencils and erasers and a multitude of things that children need and use in school. And then we determined that the next priority was for clean, potable drinking water. And so we found an individual who invented the most incredible water filtration system, and we purchased over 200 of them, each one capable of providing clean, fresh, potable water for 1,000 people. And we delivered them and installed them throughout Haiti. And then, of course, there's this horrible, fairly recent tragedy involving the earthquake. And we went over there, and we saw the devastation firsthand. And it became clear to us that what Haiti needed more than anything were little homes. And so I was sitting at my desk just noodling, and I drew up a little house. And I brought it over to my construction guys, and I said, can we do a little scale model, quarter inch? And we did. And then I said, you know what, let's do a life model. And we did, and we exhibited it at a home and garden show here in Orlando at the convention center. And people went crazy. And then we said, you know what? We need to build thousands of those, and we need to create villages. And so what we created was a wonderful template called La Petite Maison de Haiti, the little Haiti house, village, kibbutz. So what we're doing is we're combining our little village with the Israeli kibbutz concept so that people who live in these villages have an opportunity to work, generate revenue, and sustain their little village. Now, we were going to give these homes away, but the government, I think quite wisely, said, no, don't give them away because that will create some problems. Sell them. And we said, well, how could the people afford to buy these homes? I mean, they cost about $8,000, $9,000, or $10,000, depending upon the size of the family. And they said, well, you figure it out. And we did. So now we sell the homes to individuals who the government recommends to us who qualify for the homes, and they can buy a mortgage, a 50-year, 75-year, 100-year mortgage at 1% interest. And they're capable now. They're capable now of buying the homes. In addition to the homes, we have an individual who will generously build soccer fields and basketball courts. And we have individuals who will provide a tilapia fish farm. We have individuals who will help us with the kibbutz concept. We'll have pigs and chickens and goats. We'll have mangoes and papayas. We'll have coconuts and bananas. We'll have corn and we'll have sugar. And now we have this magnificent little village. Now, in addition to that, we said, what about education? Can we combine our Tangelo Park philosophy with this beautiful little village kibbutz? Why not? Why not make sure that every 2, 3, and 4-year-old in our village has an opportunity to start school? Why not also guarantee that youngsters who go to college in Haiti, most of them Catholic institutions, why don't we guarantee them a free scholarship to any college in Haiti? And so now we're combining that, and now we have this beautiful template where we hope thousands and thousands and thousands of people will be able to live in the next 10 to 15 years and completely change Haiti and create this from a difficult situation a wonderful paradise. And that's what we're working on, and we're very excited about it.
Well, it's truly inspiring what you've just shared, because many a time we hear about the challenges, the frustration, the difficulties, and here is an example of how you've taken some of your experiences in the Tangelo Park community and have been able to replicate it very successfully in Haiti, and providing individuals not just only with a temporary help, but also empowering them to be able to provide for themselves, their families, and purchase a home and provide for their families in the long term. So this is truly inspiring.
Let me share this with you, because I left one of these components out. The money for the homes, of course, don't come to us, and I want to make that clear. We have an arrangement with a bank, so these mortgage dollars, as they float back into the bank, those dollars are then available for microloans, and those dollars are available. Those dollars are available to improve the village. And so it's a beautiful circle. And listen, we don't have the first village built yet, and we're going to be in Haiti in the next couple of weeks meeting with President Martelly, who has heard about our concept and will offer us some land. And pretty soon, my hope is that early into 2013, the first La Petite Maison de Haiti Village kibbutz will be underway, and other individuals will see that in Haiti it is possible to do really wonderful things.
Well, this is truly commendable indeed, Mr. Rosen, and we look forward to hearing about the success of your endeavors in Haiti in the days and weeks to come, and look forward to having you rejoin us and share with our listeners about the progress taking place. And for our listeners who have just joined us on America's Roundtable and have been hearing our discussion with Mr. Rosen, Mr. Harris Rosen is President and COO of Rosen Hotels and Resorts and is Florida's largest independent hotelier. And he founded the company in 1974. And today, Rosen Hotels and Resorts features a collection of 7 Central Florida hotels and offering 6,300 guest rooms in Central Florida. Mr. Rosen, it is always a delight to discuss some of these key issues that are affecting us as citizens, as individuals in our society here in America. And we thank you for your out-of-the-box thinking and the creative solutions that you provide.
That's right. I was just going to say this out-of-box thinking could be so valuable for governments and international organizations that do not have such effects of money spent. I mean, just these private solutions, out-of-box thinking, and templates that you provided are just very, very commendable.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate that, and it's always a pleasure to appear with you guys. You're doing wonderful work, and you're to be congratulated on the fine work you do.
All right.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rosen.
This is America's Roundtable. Visit us at americasrt.com. Follow us on Twitter at americasrt. You can find us on YouTube and Facebook. Like and share.